Hey everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Real Estate Rundown. In our first episode, we covered advocacy and how your association, both on the local, state, and national level, is helping to provide great policy decisions going forward to help with affordability of housing and to help Americans achieve the American dream. So today, I'm excited to welcome two of my great friends today. I've got Clay Vassey back with us for this episode, and I'm a good friend with New Story Living, Shane Miller. So thank you both for joining us today. Yeah, thank you, man. Happy to be here. Yeah, glad to have you. So we're going to jump in and just, Shane, I'm going to hit you with this right off. The million-dollar question right now that I think everybody is asking is, what's going on with the interest rates right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, Josh. And to be honest with you, what we're seeing right now, as most of you are probably witnessing, we're seeing a lot of volatility and a lot of turbulence. Obviously, this Iran conflict is influencing that, as well as inflation and the price of oil. But the reality is when it comes to interest rates, there's always going to be some bit of fluctuation. What we're seeing, and I want to be very careful how I frame this, because every time I talk about interest rates, I like to give national aggregated rates, because if I start talking very, very specific at the very low or bottom line level, then people might say, well, man, those rates are higher, those are too low, or weren't so-and-so offering me a higher rate or a lower rate. But the reality is today, the national aggregated rate on your 30-year fixed rate mortgage, assuming a 780 plus credit score, 25% down or better, $250,000 loan amount or higher, is sitting somewhere around 6 3/4. And that doesn't mean that some buyers can't get much lower than that, and some perhaps a little higher than that. But that's about the average that we're seeing right now in the 30-year fixed.
Okay, so, there's quite a big difference from where we were, 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, when we were hovering around the 3% range, right?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And that's crazy when you think about how much in just 6 years we've had, such a huge change in our interest rates. So, I ran some stats yesterday from NAR, and what they do is they take our metropolitan area, which our metropolitan area that we're in right now is Greenville-Anderson. So that also does include Oconee County and Pickens County, but they call it the Greenville-Anderson metro areas. So kind of a cool thing that I kind of pulled yesterday is they talked about, okay, let's just bump that mortgage rate up to 7%. We'll round up per se. And let's drop that now down 1%. So if we had a 1% interest rate drop, that's going to open up 17,000, a little over 17,000 potential home buyers that are now going to be able to afford the median price of a home. Okay, and then that's a crazy number for me. Of that 17,000, we're looking at over 4,000 people that currently rent, that are just kind of hanging on, because right now they can't afford anything, so they're renting homes to try to do that. So do you see a thing, any kind of rate drop? I mean, obviously you can't, you're not a fortune teller or anything like that with this. But do you see anything like that happening? I mean, like that we can possibly see that 1% interest rate drop in the next year or two?
Look, Josh, I'm a realist, but I'm also cautiously optimistic, and I do think that we're going to see interest rates drop a bit. Obviously, much of this is going to depend on what happens with the price of oil, inflation, and our current conflict with Iran. I would have told you, and this is, I'll give you something that my chemistry teacher told me in high school. I had a chemistry teacher one time tell me, everything I'm telling you today could be a lie. Because there are so many data points and market-driven factors here that anybody that tells you concisely what's going to happen in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months is purely forecasting. They don't really know, right? And I think what we're experiencing right now, more than we've probably experienced in a very, very, very long time, is it's not entirely data-driven, because we're seeing the market react and overreact in many cases unnecessarily. Okay, so I think rates will come down. We've seen over the last few days, and we see this every time oil drops a little bit and there's an alleged peace deal on the table. We see rates begin to come back down a hair. Yeah. And I think as long as that happens, the strait reopens, we're going to see that. But no one really knows what's going to happen in the next 24, 48 hours. But I do think that rates will continue dropping comfortably down into the low 6s and perhaps in a high 5 handle nationally in the year to come. If that happens, to your point, Josh, I think that we're going to experience a lot more folks getting off the sideline who are currently sidelined as a result of higher rates, and they're going to get back into buying business.
So is it the rates or is it the stubbornness of buyers? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. The buyers that are now comparing to 3 or 4 years ago with 3% and 4%, they're saying, no, I'm not going to buy it 6%. I don't think they know the difference. I believe that a lot of them just say that because that's all that they know to say, maybe as a wall, and the agents aren't beating that down, aren't tearing that wall down. So I think it takes a lot of agent education to find out what the difference of 4% versus a 6 or a 5 versus a 6.5, where that number lays. I just don't think that the agents try hard enough to defend the industry, knowing that maybe it does drop a little. We're not going to get the coupon, right? We're not going to get the 3% coupon anymore. The 3% coupon has expired. It's gone. And so now looking at the rates, if it does drop and we do dip back down into the 5s, it's probably going to be temporary. You're going to have to be ready, and then it's going to dip back up and dip back down and raise back up. So it's going to be back and forth. In my opinion, on that line, that's high 5s, low 6s for a while. Are you seeing anything different than that?
No, I agree with you on where the rates are going to be for sure. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I certainly don't think rates are going to be 5% the next 8 months. You know, so I do think that we need to expect rates to be in that high 5 handle, low 6 handle. There's 2 words that you said there, Clay, that really resonate with me. The first one is education, because I'm a big believer in that pillar of education. I think we all have a fiduciary and a professional responsibility to educate the consumer, because there's so much lack of it out there. The second one is stubbornness. I'm not sure if it's stubbornness as much as it is exhaustion, right? You think about what's happened just over the last 24 months. I mean, we're in this conflict right now with Iran, and we're going from essentially in the past 2 years, rates being comfortably, to your point, in the 3s, then the 4s, and then the 5s, 5.5, 6, 6.5, even up as high as 8.25 or somewhere in that mid-8 handle. And now we're back in the 6s. Buyers have seen so much back and forth with rates and home appreciation and affordability that I can understand why they're exhausted. Yeah, because there's so little consistency. And then going back to education, that's why education is so important. Because if we educate the buyer and we explain to them what can happen and what needs to be done and what they can afford, then I think we will begin to pull some back in who may have been a bit exhausted by this market.
It seems to me a lot of agents fall back on liability, and they're concerned to discuss rates. They're concerned to discuss repair requests. Even a lot of things that are on our contracts, they say, well, I've got somebody that we can call about that. And they are so nervous that they're going to be sued, or they don't answer the questions, and they don't try to find the answer. So a lot of my concern is that agents are more concerned with liability than they are actual education. They're concerned if they share the information that they know, that they're going to get in trouble if something's not right exactly the way that they know it. So they have a guy, right? They call a guy, but unfortunately they don't have the answers right away.
Right.
And I think the undereducation is exactly that. They need more education so they can answer these quick questions. And then if they need to lean on the pros for some of the others, I think that they're just afraid they're going to be sued. It seems like even in repair requests or anything, sure, there's a concern. What's the process? If we need more information about something, what's the process? Where can we get the information? Do you have a quick website for us, or are we just supposed to call you?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. So you can obviously go to newstorylending.com. We actually have a lot of really good information on our website. There's a lot of blogs on there that talk about a litany of different topics, products, just some conversational type pieces like this right here, frankly, where there are topics on there that we dive into and unpack a little bit. But look, I think I'm a big believer, like you and Josh, I'm a big believer in education. And frankly, I think you have to be educated yourself so you can communicate that effectively to the consumer. And I think that's part of our fiduciary responsibility, that you need to be educated so you can have these conversations. So to directly answer your point, I think the website, you know me, you both text me, call me. The same is true of any of our new historians.
Sure.
You can certainly call and text any of them, and email anything, any and all of the above. But
so, and talking about the new historians, and I don't mean to come off the track, Josh, but I'm interested, and I think everyone would be. You've now owned New Story and created New Story right at 3 years ago?
We launched in June of 2023. We actually forged the company in the latter part of 2022.
You had your company for 3 solid years now. Tell me where you're at, what you got going on, what states you do or you don't cover. How's it going?
Yeah, man. I love that question because it feels like we've been around for so much longer, but we launched in June of 2023. So we just surpassed our third full year of production. But my business partner, Juan, and I actually started the company at the end of 2022, but didn't launch until June of 2023. So we are a national company, and we're in 37 states right now and counting. And we're super proud of that and couldn't be happier about what we're doing and where we're going and the growth that we're having. We're very cultural, very culture-minded people. That's how all of the leadership in our company thinks, and we're very particular about who we bring into the fold. But we are a national company, and I think oftentimes folks around here, because I've been in the business for, gosh, I don't know, 22, 23 years, however long now, that a lot of folks here in the local community, they know me, and I'm very blessed and fortunate to be in this community. You both know that I love our community, and I try to immerse myself in it. So not everybody knows we're a national company. They think we're super local because that's where our corporate office is, and this is where I sit. But we are national, and I think it is a compliment because sometimes people think that we're just here. But we're all over the place, man.
So
we're all over the place.
The size of the company is impressive in a short amount of time, but your offerings seem to be what's most impressive. You seem to have more available than most anyone else has. Why? How? What are you doing that's special and different in the business sense?
Well, I think, and I love that question, Clay, because I think what happened over the years, particularly just leading up to the pandemic and during the pandemic, a lot of mortgage companies wanted to be everything. They wanted to be data companies. They wanted to be tech companies. They wanted to, as we moved towards AI, they wanted to be AI companies. And I'm not throwing any stones. There's nothing wrong with that. To each their own. But for us, we wanted to keep it very, very simple. We are a mortgage company. And we will put mortgages first. We will put retail mortgages first. We don't care to be all of these different things. We obviously build our tech stack to support the consumer, to support our fleet, but we're a mortgage company first. And I think that keeping it simple has allowed us to grow very quickly. It's allowed us to elevate very quickly because we focus on that primary goal. And when we started, in the spirit of keeping it simple, we did just that. I mean, we're a direct agency. We were able to get our direct agency approval within 90 days of launching. We sought and achieved profitability within 3 months of launching. And as a result, we've been able to bring on tons of different correspondents and other investors in the non-QM world. Okay. And because of that, there's really not much we don't. As a matter of fact, in the residential space, I'm not sure there's anything we don't do. To be honest, there are things we obviously do a lot more than others. Yeah. But in the residential space, we do just about all there is to do in the residential mortgage space.
Yeah.
Bringing it back now, Shane, you obviously do a lot with buyers and with agents alike. And, we hear the media talking a lot about, mortgage rate coming down, mortgage rate coming down, and so I think a lot of people may be hesitant just for that reason. But why now then? Why should a buyer, what do you tell buyers? What do you tell agents about what they should tell their buyers on why to jump off the fence? Why, to get off the ground, go and start buying now?
Yeah, I mean, Josh, that's easier. That's a fairly easy question for me just because I've been consistent in my response for as long as I've been in this business. And my answer when a buyer asks me, when should I buy, is always now. And the reason I always say now is because we've experienced in our country, for the most part, obviously there have been some exceptions in the past two and a half decades. There are exceptions to every rule, but we've experienced some pretty comfortable appreciation throughout the country, especially here in the Southeast and the Northeast. So in those two regions, generally speaking, home price appreciation is going to continue to rise. And if a buyer were to wait and sit on the sideline for the next, 6, 12, 18, 24 months, the home that they could buy today for, let's say, $300,000, and I'm just throwing out that round number, might be $310,000, $315,000, $325,000 in a year and a half, 2 years from now. So the challenge with buyers sitting on the sideline today is you don't know exactly what that appreciation spread is going to do in the next 12, 24 months. And as a result, even if rates come down, and when rates come down, by the way, I think probably we're going to see more buyer demand. which could drive prices up even a little more. And the home that you could purchase today with a more elevated interest rate could very well cost you more, even if the rates are lower 12, 18, 24 months from now.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that because about the price of the homes going up. So I did do a little research, obviously, because I'm that way. And I found something interesting. So I went back the past 100 years, so back from 1900s, and I looked to see over those 20-year periods what the median house prices were. And there's only one 20-year period where home values, the median price actually dropped. That was between 1920 and 1940, which was the Great Depression. Even from 2000 to 2020, we still saw the home prices actually almost tripled within that 20-year period, even though we went through the Great Recession and that. So, I find it very interesting that, people are, kind of waiting on those interest rates. But to your point, home prices are going to keep jumping. And what's that 1% really going to do, if they wait 10 years from now? So, Clay, I'm going to pitch it over to you now. Okay. So, what are you telling buyers? I'm not asking for your selling point or anything like that. You're asking, but what do you tell people that may be just a little bit different?
So you span to 20 years. My span is 10 years. And if you're hoping to see some equity on the backside, you're going to hold for 10 years. The question that we're getting is, if I buy this house now and I want to sell it in 3 years or 5 years, will I be able to make money? That's a new question. So before it was, will I be able to get out without having to spend money? So now folks are trying to see what they're going to get above and beyond that number. So the truth is, now's the time to buy. So if your decision is, I'm going to sell my house and wait, you're going to pay more on your finance charges for renting because it's 100% charge. Like, you're not getting any of that money back, versus if you buy a home, your hope is to at least hold the money in that place. But we're seeing 10 years. If for some reason the market dips, I think in 10 years, we're going to at least come back up. So if you follow that 10-year pattern, it's always pitched above where the 10-year started. And I don't have any concern at all saying that today's the right day to buy. Even with higher rates, there's refinancing options, there's buy down options, there's all kind of options. But if you don't at least start the process, you're going to get behind. And if something bigger does happen, then you're going to be priced out of the market again. I don't believe our problem is truly the interest rates. I believe the problem truly is affordability, and how income matches ability to purchase, matches what's for sale. And I think that's a bigger problem than our financing charges are right now, especially in our market.
And I'm glad you brought up affordability.
Okay.
What a great segue. Nice segue.
I didn't mean to pitch it to you. But before you get into that stat, though, check this out. So when you look at the agents just in Oconee County, and the talk from Spartanburg County, some of my friends in Spartanburg County and Greenville County is, man, I wish I lived out there so that I could get a higher price per sale, right? I want my price per sale to be higher. It's not. So the average purchase price in Oconee County is very close to that in Greenville and very close to that in Spartanburg. While we have the lakes and we have some agents that really do well and sell big multi-million-dollar homes, our average sales price in Oconee County is still equal to that of the other counties around our market. And so, I think location has something to do with affordability, but we're not so far over the affordability because of these multi-million-dollar lake homes. We are now getting more jobs. We're now getting more opportunity in Oconee County than we've ever had. And so while those positions and jobs are moving to this area, that's also increasing our ability to afford homes at our average sales price.
Yeah, awesome. So back to affordability. I mean, right on with that. So NAR again gave us some great statistics on the actual housing affordability index. And right now, here in our metro area, we're sitting at 119.3 is our home affordability index right now, which means that the average family earns 19% more than what is required to purchase to qualify for a median priced home, right? So while the media is telling us one story, here in the Southeast and in South Carolina, especially the upstate, we're seeing a completely different kind of localized story that we're seeing right now, right? And so I think that's kind of interesting and telling. So Shane, what do you think about that? I mean, like, what does that tell you as a lender?
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting statistic, and I've always appreciated it here in the Southeast. And you mentioned specifically South Carolina, so I'll talk about South Carolina. I think that affordability here in our state is much better than many other places in the country, and I think cost of living here is lower, and it's for all of those reasons. I think that many buyers here have an advantage. But look, I mean, at the end of the day, man, I'll say this to you. Every family has to be comfortable with their decision. So I don't want to come across as just some real estate hawk because I'm a big believer in it. I am personally. I'm a big believer in wealth generation, achieving the American dream of full ownership. But you got to be comfortable as a family. So guys, look, don't send me nasty emails saying the market's never going to crash and, the stock market's going down in the past. And Josh mentioned a little bit earlier about in the past 126 years, there's only been a 20-year stretch of depreciation. There's an exception to every rule, so don't send me the nasty mail. Yep. But generally speaking, we have an advantage in real estate. And when you are looking at overall wealth generation and affordability, this is a great place to do it.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's safer to me than the stock market, especially long term when you're watching. And then family needs are always met within real estate. And so there are sometimes foreclosure. There are some needs for foreclosure. That's a service that definitely is needed. But in the upcoming market, with the equity that we have in our homes currently, because of the past 5 to 6 years, we really should see that number drop drastically. And then as we move forward, real estate agents have to not list so high. We can't list it at what the market value would be plus X. I think we've got to really pay attention to where our list price comes in. Appraisals have adjusted, right? So we're seeing a lot of adjusted appraisals. We're seeing a lot of adjusted pricing when we put these listings on. Now with this slowdown, we're at 5.5 months worth of inventory within the MLS right now. So our MLS at 5.5, almost 6 months of inventory, which puts us into a buyer's market again. So just over the 5 months, we fall into a buyer's market. Days on market has created that, not number of homes, not number of the number of homes in inventory, but days on market is much longer, which when there's the same amount of listings and days on market is longer, that gives us the opportunity to increase that inventory list. So I believe we are in a buyer's market. We are negotiating more, and the right homes do sell quickly. But that paired with the interest rate, I think that's really what slowed us down.
And I want to keep it on you just for a second, too, because we've been talking about how, if these buyers flood into the market, and if we see, a lot more buyers come into the market, obviously our inventory is going to shrink, right? And you were just mentioning keeping housing prices down. So, but if we have buyers flooding into the market, it's going to absorb that inventory.
Well, I'm not saying keep them down. I'm saying keep them right.
Keep them right.
So list them properly. Don't bring them below that market value, but list them properly.
Yeah, well, that it creates some kind of housing inflation. Then, if we have more buyers and less higher demand for less homes.
Yeah.
I mean, so we could be again talking about how interest rates and we've talked about all that all around, but Shane, back to you. Shane, if we do see more buyers come into the market, if we do see some of that happening, then what do you think is going to happen then with those prices maybe increasing again?
Yeah, I'm comprehensively looking at the economy. When I look at things and I try to look at things on a comprehensive scale. There's going to be a lot of buyers out there right now that throw tomatoes at me for saying this, but I don't think a 3.5% interest rate is good for our market. I don't think it's healthy for our market when there's obviously something significant happening and critical happening in our market economically. And real estate makes up a very significant portion of GDP in this country. Mm-hmm. So when rates are 3.5%, we have a swinging pendulum on the other side where it's not always good for buyers because while rates are low, usually home demand is so high that you could be overpaying for homes. So when I look at it on a larger scale, I think that rates are comfortable and healthy somewhere. And there's no perfect math here, but let's call it 4.5 to 5.5, maybe 5.5, really. And that way folks are performing well in the stock market. while they're still getting a decent interest rate on their home, then everybody's happy for the most part.
Yep. So to make it clear, what you're saying is interest rates drop, prices go up, right? If interest rates go up, prices seem to drop. The truth is right in the middle is where the market lays. And so you're really not paying more if the rates are higher because the prices are maybe a little bit lower on the home. And you're really not paying less if the rates are lower because the prices of the home go up. And so somewhere in between is where the market needs to be. So the lower rates drives demand, which means drives the price of the homes up. So you're paying more for the house, you're just financing it for less. The money's going to someone. So I agree with you 100%. I think that anything 3 anything, maybe even 4 anything is probably too low. I like that sweet spot of 5. I wish we could get back to 5. I think that would change the market. Funny enough, school started back this week. I've convinced most of my buyers because of data that when school starts back, and even my sellers, when school starts back, that's when the floodgates open again. Buyers are starting to make decisions. The problem is the end of that opportunity is daylight savings time. So maybe we should get rid of daylight savings.
There's something going on.
Yeah, there's something going on. Daylight savings from this week until daylight savings time. This is when we need the open houses. This is when we need to do all the marketing and push all of our listings and really start cramming our listings out there because now people are starting to look. And my phone this morning has had more showing requests than I've had in weeks because people coming back from vacation, preparing to come back from work. So many people took big vacations this year. Big, gone for vacations, long amount of time. And it seems like things have turned. Now that they're back, they're wanting to look at houses again. So I believe we have not missed what could be a sweet spot in our market, even with the 6 3/4 rate, whatever your number was this morning. I think we're still in a sweet spot to be able to sell those homes.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that, look, there might be some data analyst or economist out there that says, oh, Shane, you said 5%. The real number is 4%, 4.5%. I'm just giving you a spread there to say that I think when folks have a healthy wage increase that is following or outpacing inflation, when your stocks and securities and your portfolios are doing well, outperforming beyond what your mortgage rate is, and you have a comfortable mortgage rate, it's good for buyers and sellers, right? And you don't swing too heavily one way or the other.
That's right.
Something you said just kind of like struck me just a second ago. And I was talking to somebody just last night, actually, that was, they have a home of theirs for rent. And they were like, school's coming back in session. Nobody's going to be looking to, rent a home now because school's coming back into session. And, to your point, people have been on vacation. They're coming back. But, I think in a lot of people's mindsets, all right, people are getting set in school. They've got their children in school. They don't want to uproot them in the middle of a school season and go and move into a house. So, there's kind of, I guess this is kind of education piece, Shane, that you were talking about. Both of you are, deal with this on an everyday basis. So, Shane, is that typical that you do actually see a flood of, inquiries around the time that school starts? Or is there kind of like a little small lull maybe? Or is it just, full hands on when everybody gets back from vacation? That's an interesting thing, right?
The reason I'm laughing at that question, Josh, is because I was literally thinking this morning on the way over here, I was like, you know what? I know Josh is going to talk about something about the normalcy in the market, right? And I'm laughing because I was laughing to myself in the car this morning as I was driving over. I was like, because, when everybody's an expert, no one's an expert. And that's kind of where I feel like we are right now, is you have folks who historically have done this for a really, really long time. And over my career, I can track data points. I can tell you what normal looks like, and I can tell you what rates should do based on the data that I'm analyzing. Man, it's tough today. It's tough because rates aren't really following the data in many capacities. The market is overreacting in some cases to what's being said versus then what's actually happening. So for those professionals in this business, it's hard to pinpoint normalcy right now because the market hasn't been what I'd consider normal in probably 6-7 years. But with that being said, yes, generally speaking, historically speaking, this time of year, there's normally a lull in parts of July because folks are going on vacation. They're trying to get that last vacation in before kids go back to school. And now the kids are going back to school, to Clay's point. He mentioned his phone's been blowing up this morning more than it has in the past several weeks. I think we're seeing that. And I think that lends to a little bit of normalcy to what we're used to seeing. Will it stand? I don't know. But at least for now, we're beginning to see the seasonality in the business.
So coming up with SCR, we have our legal conference at SCR, and we were able to title it Business Unusual, right? And that lends itself to exactly what you're talking about, is this is extremely unusual timing, right? We're not, the numbers aren't matching. The blue line and the red line that normally runs side by side, partying, and they're up and down against each other. So it's more of a dance move than it is a business strategy. And right now, everyone's having to adjust. There's no better time right now than now to buy a house, period. You asked the question earlier. This is the right time. There's no better time than now to sell a house, period. The reason is because this season, from now all the way till Christmas, the folks that are looking to sell has to sell. The folks that are looking to buy has to buy. This is your best opportunity for you to get the most out of your home or get the best deal possible on your home, depending on what the situations are. But this next 5 weeks, 4 weeks until daylight savings time hits, that gives you the most amount of time to be able to view and see these homes from the time they get off work until the sun's down. And then we lose that hour, and then it's really narrowed our showing times down. But this is the right time. This is the right time. This county is continually growing, constantly growing. There's lots of good activity. We're getting new businesses. We're getting new jobs. You can't say that for everywhere in the country. You said you're a national company now. If you were to compare South Carolina, this business here versus other states, I've got to say we're in the top 7, 8, maybe 5 of growth and continuation. More people are moving here than ever. This is the right place to buy. It's the right place to sell. Now's the right time to invest and invest into real estate. There's lots of different ways to do it, but this is the right time.
Yeah. Yeah, and Shane, this kind of an interesting thing. I'm just curious myself because the average first home buyer, with the age that they are right now, is now in their mid-40s. Is that something you're seeing here too?
Somewhat. Yeah, somewhat. Again, I think the point that Clay just mentioned about the analytics and the data supporting that South Carolina is one of the largest migrated states in the country is true. We're seeing that. We've seen that for the past couple of years. And as a result of that, I don't think that we don't necessarily align with perfect cohesion with the national statistics. So at least, and I'm speaking obviously for New Story Lending, we're still seeing a lot of first-time home buyers in their late 20s, early 30s. But we just closed some loans just this past month with first-time home buyers who were in their 60s. Wow. So is the influx of first-time home buyers more comfortably in that 30, early 40 range? Yes, we're seeing that too. But I think we're a little more shielded from that than some of the other states.
Yeah. So, and both of you might could answer this question too. So, I was talking to some business owners this past week, and they're seeing kind of a dip in their sales themselves, and the reason is because of Gen Z being more, I guess, for lack of a better, antisocial, just because they come through COVID, right? And they're used to doing that, everything's online. They're not used to going out and doing that. Do you think that plays a part as well as affordability, or do you think that they're two completely separate things when you're talking about that age range being comfortable with buying?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think obviously from an affordability perspective, buyers are doing more research. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Look, I'm a capitalist. I'm a believer in competition. I think it's a good thing for people. And I think it's a really good thing for the consumer under most circumstances. So when they get online and they compare lenders, or they compare agents, or they compare, this house over that house, or this state over that state, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think a lot of that is driven by affordability, because who has the best rate, who's going to represent me the best, who offers the best service. I also think it's just generational. I think this generation is online a lot more in terms of their research and how they're conducting business. Yeah. I can tell you overwhelmingly, at least from a news story perspective, while we have a couple of buyers right now who come to our office every single week to turn in documents. They want a hand delivery. They want to print documents. Gracie, I think, or Mark or someone was printing documents yesterday in the office because we had a buyer show up who wanted their disclosures all printed. Yeah. But on the opposite end, and more overwhelmingly, we are seeing more applications online and more applications using our mobile application leads.
Oh, for sure. I believe it. One thing I think we're waiting on, and you're talking generationally, the boomers have not sold. Mm-hmm. Right? The boomers have not sold, which is causing us to have to build more and more and more and more new construction. So as these boomers move on, that's our first generation in our history that are leaving with money in the bank. They're leaving with investments. So that money is now going to be going to their kids and their grandkids. Their kids, the boomers' kids now are in their 40s. And so a lot of that money is getting pushed into real estate, and a lot's getting pushed into buying investment properties and those. So the boomer money being the very first generation of money ever invested, saved, and generated from your investments, passing on, that's going to keep us in that 40-plus range of purchasing for a long time, and maybe help with some of the 25% down or the 50% down. Every generation since is still saving. Most everybody I know has money tied into something. They've got some kind of savings that they're looking to maybe use or take out of whatever they've got invested at age 55, right? So most people are talking, I want to retire between 55 and 60, and so they're starting to save and save and save. Money is being spent so much differently than it used to be. Money's being saved so much differently, and it's being passed on differently. So generationally, I believe our wealth still lies in our boomers because that's the folks that started saving first. As we look at how that translates to real estate, there will be a boom one day of those brick ranches that they will not look at. And we're going to have a boom for those 10 to 12-year-old homes that the master bedroom is upstairs, because those folks are going to want to buy those bricks. But it just seems to me there's a lot of money still waiting to be spent on real estate.
And it would probably help, too, going back to the last episode that we were talking about, if we could get capital gains under control, right?
It would. If we could get the capital gains adjusted to where we've appreciated, it'd be a huge benefit. I don't know that everyone would sell, but I believe it would open the door for a lot. Another thing that I believe we need, and I can talk to Shane, I have spoken to Shane about this, something we don't have lending for. All the folks that bought homes and thought they wanted to run Airbnb for a living, and now all these homes have a book of business, and they want to sell the home as a business, not sell it as a home. And so they've elevated the pricing, but you can't finance it based on the book of business. You can only finance it based on the real property, and the business doesn't flow with the real property. So are you seeing a lot of that right now? Folks are selling or wanting to buy a home that is currently used as a short-term rental. Are you seeing a lot of business do that?
We're certainly seeing a lot more of that, Clay. And I have some great news for you.
Let's hear it.
We actually do have loan products for that now.
Love it.
Yes, they're on the non-QM side. And now if you're saying, can they sell that residential property as a business on the commercial side, we don't get into that space. But in terms of a buyer who wants to purchase a home and treat it as an Airbnb, Verbo, short-term rental type of property, we absolutely have financing for that now.
Fantastic. And does it have to have a history behind it of short-term rental?
No, it just really depends on it. There's obviously variables, but there's much like an appraiser goes out and does a comparable rent schedule that we call a 1007. Under most circumstances, the same can be done in many cases for the short term. Now, the guidelines are written a little bit differently, and it's investor specific because they are non-QM wholesale style products. So they're all a little different on how we calculate that projected short-term rental.
I believe we're going to see those folks that bought in 2020, 21, 22, 23 and thought they would stay here on the lake if we never went back to an office again. They'd be in their happy place forever, and then they went back to their office. Now they've got to do something with these properties, and they don't want to pay the capital gains on it.
Right.
But at the same time, they're not there, so they short-term rent it. And now they've had short-term rental, and they've got a book of business behind them of 2 years for short-term renting. And when they go to sell the home, they want to make money, but now they've got an established business with it. And that's very, very difficult to sell both. And if you've got a product that kind of aligns itself with that, that's huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need to talk.
Let's talk.
But I mean, so I actually just thought of something that was kind of interesting that I do want to pitch over here to you, Shane. So we talked about the 3% interest rate, and I keep going back to interest rate, but I just got to thinking about it, and with Clay's points a second ago, is that back in 2020 there were purchases because interest rates were so good, but we also saw a lot of refis, right?
Yeah.
Because the interest rates were so much lower. Yeah. At the same time, we have also seen home appreciate just dramatically over the last 6 years as well. And now if people are wanting to refi because now they have more equity in their homes, and they want to refi and kind of get things kind of squared away, maybe get rid of PMI or whatever it may be because their home, but their interest rate is obviously maybe double what it was back then. Are you seeing still refis come through, or had that just kind of, it's more new purchases and maybe some HELOCs here or there?
We definitely are seeing the refinances for exactly the reason you just mentioned. So we're seeing a lot of cash out. There's a lot of wealth generation, a lot of home appreciation and equity appreciation in this country during the pandemic, right? And as a result of that, what's happening is a lot of folks who have high credit card rates or higher installment loans, or their auto loans might be at 9, 10, 12%, but they can refinance their house at 6.5% or better, depending on a few variables. They can debt consolidate, pay off all their debts because their homes have appreciated so much, and cash it out. And while they might lose that 3.5%, 4% interest rate overall, they paid off all their discretionary debt that might range between 10 and 25. So we're seeing a lot more of that on the cash out side. Now, for rate term refinances, for folks who purely just want to get their interest rates down, unless they were someone who bought in that 7.25%, 7.5%, 8% range, we're not seeing a ton of that right now. Because a lot of those folks who are wanting to refinance, they're kind of waiting to get back into those comfortable low 6s, high 5s, 5.5%, 5% range, because they may be anywhere from 6.5% to 7.5% right now.
Right. So, another point, I guess, to make and maybe shift gears just slightly is we talked about, affordability and whatnot, how close we are within that 1%, right, for that many homes to open up for individuals. But are there any programs out there? I know SC Housing is out there, but are there any other kind of programs, or how does the SC Housing program work for you in helping people achieve that dream of home ownership that otherwise with interest rate being what they are, maybe just slightly out of that level?
Yeah, I think South Carolina Housing does an incredible job with their product mix and their product offering on the bond side and the non-bond side for that matter. Palmetto Home Advantage, Palmetto Heroes, their traditional bond programs, they are great programs. And as from a rate perspective, those rates are only state mandated at South Carolina Housing, so you can't buy them down. You can't jack them up and kick back any rebates or anything like that. The rates normally are what they are, but the rates are extremely competitive, and oftentimes those rates are actually lower than what the current market yields. So it's great for that reason. And there's a lot of hardworking folks out there, a lot of first-time home buyers who are extremely well qualified, but they just might not have that down payment. South Carolina housing programs are awesome for that. And in many cases, it's not just the down payment. They'll pay the down payment and a good portion of closing costs as well. So it's good for that. At News Story, we operate on both the state and the federal side. So we have the state housing programs in many of the states in which we operate, but we have federal programs as well that provide the same down payment assistance with a lot of flexibility.
Awesome. So, another thought that, has kind of popped into my head here as we've been talking too is, around this area, we have roughly 17% of applications get denied, right, for one reason or another. So we talked about education a minute ago, Shane, and you're talking about how big of a thing is. So talk to Clay now. and tell Clay, what is something that he should tell his potential buyers that would keep them out of that 16, 17% denial rate?
Yeah, so going back to the pillar of education we talked about earlier, Clay, I think we start there. We have to educate the consumer, because I can't tell you how many times a buyer calls me and says, well, I don't think I can qualify. My credit's not great. Or I don't think I can qualify because I don't have a down payment. And I've seen it on both sides. You know, they're checking one of these credit monitoring services, and then they have a 450 credit score, and I pull credit at 650, right? So my advice would be always encourage that buyer to apply.
Yeah.
We don't charge them a dime at U-Story Lending to apply. It does not hurt you to apply.
Yep.
And let's assess your financial situation. Let's assess your credit. Let's assess your buying power. More times than not, that buyer is extremely satisfied and surprised that there's a product offering out there for them in their specific scenario than they would have thought possible.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I try to most of the time say you got to call Shane, or you got to call somebody. We've got to get someone on the hook to find out just where you lay. A lot of those programs where they're trying to follow their own credit and see what they're paying for those too. And not that they're creating a debt with it, but it's costing them money to be able to follow information that's incorrect. Education for sure is my number one concern with the number of new agents we have, and how many agents do we have in our association now?
In our association, we have a little over 2,000, MLS around 3,400.
3,400, which is nearly 10% of what we have in the entire state. So we're at 34,000 realtors in the state of South Carolina right now. When we look at that, there's about 25% of those do business. The rest are just out saying things, and they don't know what they're talking about, and they're hurting the industry because they don't sit down with someone like you. They don't sit down with someone like you and try to find out what's the nuts and bolts of the industry. And to know just what I discovered a while ago, there's a lull now. I'm going to start marketing the idea that these short terms can sell and make money. Like, I want to start marketing, a lot of the specialty stuff. But at the very basis of our business is putting people into a home and helping them build wealth. Yeah. And we're in the right market for that. We're tied with the right people for that. And for me to be able to take what you just said and share, I think it's huge. Enough agents don't do that. They don't care. All they want to do is open doors. This business is not a business of open doors anymore. This business is where people need to come to us. You said earlier, research, data diving, that's what our clients are doing. And they're trying to pick homes before they ever come to us. And if they don't need us, they don't need us. Anybody can go online and pick up 6 or 7 homes that they want to go look at. Quick, show me more information. And an agent will meet them there, unlock the door, and do the paperwork for them. That's not what we should be doing in this industry. It's exactly the same thing in mortgage. Anybody can go online, mortgage or insurance, and I can put in my information and find out what I can get, but that's not going to be the best of what my options are ever. And so we've got to continue to educate. We've got to continue to train. We've got to continue, you and I, to communicate so that we can be what our package deal is best for long-term for our client. And the agents aren't doing it. I don't know why they're not doing it. They're just not doing it.
Yes. Well, one thing you just said about the long-term, doing what's best for your client long-term. Look, one of my greatest joys is helping people achieve the dream of home ownership. And we actually, we'll go down to federal minimum at New Story as far as credit's concerned. I mean, we quite literally have closed many a mortgage at a 500 credit score, right? And that's why I tell folks, be encouraged. Don't be discouraged. So if you're encouraged and not discouraged and you're getting the right education, don't ever be ashamed to fill out that application and see where you stand. I've never seen a credit score or a credit report cannot be fixed, ever, in my career.
You've never beat anybody up because of their credit score.
No, well, there's some take a little bit longer to fix. Some takes a little bit longer to fix, but I've never seen anything that is someone dedicated, disciplined, and they have that resolve. They can fix their credit. They can purchase a home.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I was just, and I was thinking back to I hate to even bring the topic back up,
About 3%. Everybody's going to.
I'm going back further, and I'm going back to a worse time. When we were in 2007, 2008, the big kaboom, right, that we had with the downturn of the industry at that time and how bad that was. And, we saw a lot of lending practices at that time that were just unethical. To be completely candid and honest, and that one of the reasons that happened. And I know we have more government regulations that have kind of kicked in now that's kind of stopping some of that. But is there any fear of anything like that happening again? Do you think?
I guess a direct question, is there a bubble?
I think that's true. And when the bubble popped, it popped, right? So, do you think that that's going to happen, or do you think we're in pretty
Obviously, it's not for the same reason that was before, but do you think there's an invisible bubble somewhere?
Yeah, let me talk to the consumer and the audience. These guys are trying their best to get me in trouble. all jokes aside.
But the Fed's got.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I think to your earlier point, we're seeing a correction, and we're seeing an adjustment, and we're seeing the right kind of modification. I can tell you that the financial industry, the financial services sector, in which mortgage is included, we are so heavily regulated. We are incredibly regulated. I remember back when I got into this business prior to 2007, 6, 5, that I can tell you what the environment felt like. I can tell you when I sat down with a client, there was probably about like this many pages that they had to fill out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you might have had 10 disclosures, right? Yes. We're printing sending disclosure packages right now that are 100 pages long. So, and all of that is government regulation. So as far as our sector or our vein of the industry is concerned on the financial side, we're very regulated. I don't see that bubble at all. Now, what I do see, to your earlier point, you even mentioned it with appraisals, is when there is artificial inflation in the market with home prices and home sales, or folks trying to sell homes more than there probably were, I think we're seeing a lot of adjustment and correction right now where those home sales are coming back down to where they probably should be in many cases. So, no, I don't see the bubble. I think that we've done a really good job in the country in the past 15-ish plus years of regulating things in the right way. I'd even argue sometimes maybe a little heavily. Some may argue not enough. But overall, as a result of that, I think that we're mostly sheltered from that. Now, are there specific parts of this country that were completely inflated artificially as a result of the pandemic for some other reason? I think that they are in more danger for that. And I think the danger that we're seeing there is you may see more foreclosures.
Yeah.
You may see those kinds of things happening. But do I think the house today that's worth $300,000 is going to be worth $150,000 in 10 years? I do not.
Yeah. I don't think so either. The concerns that I currently have, one, buyers are not making offers. They're just saying no. And so the house is on the market for $300,000. It's inflated, artificially inflated a little bit because every buyer wants to get as much as they possibly can out of it. The seller has it listed at the 300 mark, and it's artificially inflated. So what's happening is the buyers come in and they're not offering the 275 or the 279 to see if they can get that home under the 300,000. They're just saying, no, there's no way they're going to reduce their price. That's the uneducated agents that are trying to assist those buyers. It's concerning because we have homes that are staying on the market for a little longer. On the flip side, I know I'm thinking right now 3 of the listings that I have that are over 90 days on the market, they don't want to reduce the price. They want somebody to make them an offer. I've had the conversation with them. I've got one that's been on for 60 days. I had the conversation yesterday with them. We need to bring the price down. No, if somebody wants it, they'll give me an offer. I'll take it. I'll take less. I just need to know what they're willing to pay.
Right.
And because everything's shifted, we're now in a buyer's market and the sellers think we're still in the seller's market. I think we're going to be inflated for a while. The only thing we have, to come back to your point, to pull all this together is that appraisal to tell us what the true value of that home is. And so I'm very thankful of some of the changes that are going on with appraisal. I'm very thankful for having good appraisers in our market that can tell us exactly what those homes are worth. but we've got to do a better job knowing and educating our clients and then educating ourselves. Yep.
Yeah, bridging that gap a bit for sure.
Got to.
Yeah.
You know, awesome.
Well, in closing, Shane, is there anything else that you want to add that maybe we haven't covered and you want just, whether it be agents or consumers or whoever is listening to this, just to kind of get out of this that maybe we haven't covered yet?
Yeah, well, we covered a whole lot, man. You did a great job, Josh, and I appreciate the invitation. You know, you coin yourself as an introvert, but man, I think you might be edging closer to the extrovert side these days, man. They threw it a good express back. Again, and earlier on in this conversation, one of the things that I said is I may be cautiously optimistic, and I'm a realist, but I'm always an optimist, right? And I will just say that we're not in a bad market. You know, we're experiencing some volatility and some turbulence right now, and that's always going to happen. Sometimes things are going to be smoother than others, but stay encouraged, educate yourselves, call us here at New Story Lending. We're always here to help you, and you're welcome to bounce ideas off of us, talk about products, talk about pitches to clients, and whatever it might be. But surround yourself with your village, and that's one of the things I talk about often. Make sure you have that really, really good realtor partner, your really good attorney partner, your lending partner, and you need good, experienced people in this business that can help shepherd you through whatever decision you're going to make as far as the home buying process or refinance process is concerned. And that's all I would say is make sure that you're surrounding yourself with, I know we talked about that pillar of education a lot today, but I'll end on that and say, if you're a consumer, educate yourself. If you're a realtor, educate yourself. And if you're an attorney or lender, it's important to be educated. And I think we owe it to the consumer. We owe it to the buyer to be that fiduciary that they can lean on.
Correct.
Thank you.
So let's do this. I just want to hit him with some questions.
Let's do it.
Real quick question.
Rapid fires.
So I don't know how many. I'll just go until I can't go. But I just want you to just think of the first answer that comes to your head. I'm going to throw questions at you and see what you come back with.
Okay.
We'll start real simple. Favorite color? How did you do that?
But they're hard questions. You can answer them.
Well, Clay, because my favorite color is blue, but I mean, I'm a Clemson man, so I feel obligated to say orange.
You welcome.
And first answer was flu. First.
No, that was very simple. I intentionally made it hard because you're asking the question.
Yeah, no. We're out of time.
Let's start. Let's start over.
All right.
Blue.
So favorite color is blue.
Yes.
Favorite food?
Kyle, steak.
Steak. Where's your favorite steak place?
Oh my gosh, man. Probably 47.
What do you put on your steak?
I'm normally a Pittsburgh char guy. I don't like to put a whole lot on.
Yep. So what's your temperature?
Oh, mid-rare, usually.
Mid-rare? Okay.
Yeah, I get you.
All right. Favorite car?
Man, so my favorite car growing up was probably an old 65-ish Mustang.
Okay. All right. So currently you live at Lake Kiwi. If you could have a house anywhere else at no charge, no taxes, no anything, where would that house be?
I would say probably because let me give you the why behind this one. I love our state. I'm admittedly extremely biased to our state. I love where we live. Sometimes when you just kind of want to stretch out and get away with God and just air,
Yep.
I'd probably say somewhere like, I don't know, Montana, Wyoming.
I'll agree with that. All right. So favorite activity with your family?
Oh, man. Well, our girls are involved in piano and soccer and everything else right now, but I would say probably hanging out with water. Yes, just hanging out with water.
Water anywhere?
Our girls are water bugs, so at the lake.
All right. Here's the hardest question of all of them. In your entire life, favorite memory?
Oh, man. Well, my favorite memory is my wife and our wedding, and I would say that's my favorite. She's my best friend. I can tell you right now, there's absolutely nothing I could do. I could not do what I do without her doing what she does. So I would say that memory paired with obviously the birth of my girls. I'm a girl dad. I had two daughters, 8 and 6, Lily and Maggie, and they are They are the life of my, the light of my life, if you will. So those are always great memories.
I got you. Great. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and I'm glad you did that, Clay, because we were talking before we actually did this podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally were just talking about this, about our social media accounts, right? And we talked about how most of the time we do things, and then, we talk business. In this podcast, up until here at the end, we've talked business, and there actually is a very good personal side to each of us. We all have these personal components that we don't get to know about each other. So, Clay, I'm glad that you brought that in with that, because it's really kind of cool to know the person behind the business. Yeah. And I think that's very important.
We could have sat down and done a podcast, the three of us, with a glass of bourbon in our hand and had a conversation about anything from faith to family to business. And there's not a lot of group of guys that can do that.
That's right.
And it's fun to surround yourself with people that help you grow and help you get better at what you do, and the human that you are, and the father you are, the family you are. And so to be here with you guys is always great.
Likewise, man. Well, we are blessed indeed. So maybe the next idea, maybe the next topic is, now that we've talked about all this industry and professional stuff, we got to just do something. We'll call
one, right?
We'll call it what? Faith, family, and fun.
That's right. I love it. I'm in. All right.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Shane. I really appreciate you. And, great being with you. Great being here with both of you. I consider both of you all really good friends of mine, and I'm very honored and blessed for that. So,
likewise.
But yeah, for those of y'all that are listening and have tuned in with us, we thank you for hanging on to us to the very end and listening to us banter about. But until next time, we'll have another episode about this time next month. But until next time, have a good one, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dennis.
All right. Thank you.